So for this design I'm going to use a number of different techniques, and I'm going to include applique. I'm going to use that in these big grassy areas here. In order to do that, we're going to cut out, so I'm going to print a second copy of this, have one for reference, and then in my second copy I'm going to cut out these large shapes. I'm not going to worry about the trees, I'm just going to cut past the tree line through the basket just to give me a really good clear shape for each of these hills, and I'll show you what that looks like. So I've cut out the middle section of the hills, and I'm going to do that with this light green felt. Now because it's on felt, which I can use either side, I can stick this up the right way and just cut that out. But for this other piece of hill that I've used in the foreground, which will sit here, I've used a one-sided fabric, which is here. It's like a kind of faux suede sort of thing. So there's a right and a wrong side, this being the wrong side. So what I needed to do with this one, and it'll be easier to show you in this particular shape that I've already cut out, like this. I've got the wrong side of the fabric facing up, and I've got the wrong side against the right side of the picture. That means when I turn it up the right way, the shape will be the right way round, otherwise it'd be back to front. But as this is now going to sit in here, and then I'm going to have another piece in the foreground which will sit here once I've got this out. So I'm just going to have this light green in the middle. You can make this whatever colour or shade of green you want to. You don't have to use applique. You could do some interesting design stitches, maybe some French knots or something like that, or you could even use pearls, perhaps even mounted on top of some felt fabric. Okay, so I'll show you the next step. I've traced the outline onto a piece of calico, and I've just put this on a light box, and the calico is actually quite thin. I could probably have just about seen through without it. But what I did was I folded the calico into four. I made sure I had a good square to start with, and I folded it into four to find the middle piece like that. Can't do it one-handed, but found the corner of that. Did the same with the picture. And I actually marked up this other one that I was cutting out, and then I lined them up, traced around it so that my image would be nice and central. Now, having done that, I can start to arrange my parts onto this and decide, is that quite what I want? I'm actually going to have, it's going to be quite a sort of bit of a 3D kind of effect. It will be quite layered, this, so I'm going to put my basket on top of that afterwards, and I've got this idea for a little weaving here with these metallic threads that I've got. I think that would look really good, and then I will put my trees on afterwards. So what I want to do is I want to start with all the things that are at the back in the background first, and then I'm going to put things on top of that. So I'm going to cut out some clouds as well. And probably what I'm going to do is I'm either going to paint the background calico blue like a sky, and if I like that, then I'll probably leave it with that kind of background for the blue bits in here. If I don't like it, I might just decide to use another piece of fabric, perhaps in light blue or something like that, a light blue cotton, and just put that as another layer. But I'm aware that I'm going to have lots of layers here, and it could get quite thick for a needle to pass through because I'm planning on putting pearls on the balloon. The balloon is going to be obviously the highlight of the piece, and that's the bit that's going to be the most glitzy, as it were. So you'll notice I haven't bothered to put in all the little shapes that I've got. I'll probably decide that as I go along. So the next thing to do is to cut out this other piece of foreground and do some clouds next. Remember, if your fabric that you're applying is double-sided, it doesn't matter which way you stick your image onto it. I've done mine with sellotape. I'll show you, that's over here. There we go. So I've just stuck this on with sellotape. Can't really see it. There we go, with sellotape all the way around the edge of that. And then I'll just cut around this. That just holds it in place. I'll cut around this. As I get towards the end, there won't be much sellotape holding it together, so you have to be careful to keep it the same, in the same place. The benefit potentially of using this felt in between these two is that felt's a little bit stretchy. So if I've got, you know, sort of a tiny little gap in between the two layers, then I can just kind of stretch the felt a little bit just to fill that gap. But again, I mean, I could have just put a flat piece there and then mounted this on top of that and the other one on top of the other. So I'm just experimenting here as I go along, really, and I'll make my final decisions once I've tried out a few things. Okay, until the next stage. I've also got this rickrack, and that could also come in useful as well, I feel. I think this is definitely worth keeping out to one side to consider using for a background, because it's very, very thin. This will not take much sewing through to apply everything else, so it might work quite well as a background. So I've cut out my balloon. Yes, a bit of the basket is missing because of the hillside, but that's okay, that's not a problem. The basket is not a problem, but I've got my balloon intact because I am going to use that later. Now that means I've cut out also my clouds. Don't really need my bits of sky, so I can just put them to one side. I'm going to arrange this on my bit of felt to make the best use of where I've already used some, and then I'm going to stick this down and cut those out, because I think whether I use wool or whatever I use, I'm definitely going to attach it all to a felt base. I've decided. I think that's going to be necessary. So let's get that bit done next. If you've not done this sort of thing before, cutting out like this, then I recommend once you've stuck it down, just cut from the big piece. Just give yourself a little bit, much easier to trim around this very, very carefully if you're not also wielding a large piece of fabric that's attached to it. So that's a tip as well. This is another one of my goodie boxes. Just little bits of offcuts. You never know when they could be useful. I mean, I could have done a cloud with that bit. I didn't need to. Look, see, one of my clouds would have fitted on that. I didn't need to use a whole big piece. But anyway, suffice to say that in here I've got little bits. I probably cut that to try it out on something else and didn't like it, and I just put it in there. But look what I found. I've got this fabric, and I think that would make a nice kind of meadow, wouldn't it? I wonder if I can include that somehow. I love this fabric. It's on just about everything I've sewn. It's on bags, it's on quilts. Let's see if I can show you some of the places that I've put this. Here we go. It's on the back of this quilt. Let's go and find my bag. Ta-da! And there it is again on my little tote bag. It is so pretty. I do love that. Unfortunately, sadly, I don't think I can fit my favourite fabric into this picture. I think I'm just squeezing it in and it doesn't work, does it? So if I just take that out and pop that back, that's fabulous, that's perfect. So sorry, not this time. You can go back into my, where have you gone? Into my special box of tricks over here. Bye! Another time, and you'll be ready gathered for whatever I want to use you for. Now this thread does fray really, really easily, and I couldn't get it through this needle because every time I tried to push it through, the outer thread came through. So I've done a lasso method and I've pulled it through, and now I'm going to be able to pull it through very, very gently, but I do need to keep this end short because it's going to fray and I'm going to have to keep moving the needle up. But hopefully I'm in business. So I have an idea for my basket. I want to wrap this cord around here one way, then I'm going to thread another one through it and basket weave it. But I'm going to stick another piece of felt on the other side so that I've got something to sew onto. It's going to be quite thick. It's going to be quite thick, but I think it's going to work. I think I need a bigger piece. That way I can couch it. I can just wrap it around, couch the two ends, and then the rest of it just be a case of weaving through. Let's see if that will work. So I glued the two pieces of felt to either side of a small piece of quite thick card that I had, so that I've got something firm with which to wrap this cord around. I've just found this clip which is just holding on. I've wrapped it all the way around, and now I'm just sewing down the edges. So I don't want to sew down the middle. I don't want to couch it down completely because I want to thread and weave through these with something else. So I'm just stitching down the sides because I've got a bit of fabric on each side of this board, and the bit of felt goes just over the edge of the board. I've got something to stitch onto. And because the board is nice and thick, the fabric didn't just fall apart. I couldn't have wound that round just a floppy piece of fabric. So I didn't want to couch traditionally because plunging the ends, it'd be too thick. So this seems like the best way to do it. I'll show you when I get a bit further. Okay, so here's what it's looking like so far. Now I've left the tail end. When I started, I just glued the first end of this in between the felt and the card. That seemed like the most sensible thing to do to get it started. And then I've just wrapped it round and round and round and round and round and round. And then I've kind of stitched over the end bits just to hold it in place. I've stitched to the felt that's underneath that. But what I've decided to do is to leave this long tail on because I might want to use that and just do a bit of edging and couch down afterwards once I've attached this to the backing fabric. But the next thing, I mean, it looks quite nice like that actually, but I do want to try and weave in and out of it. I think that would look nice because that would look even more basket-like then. So I'm going to try that next, but I'm going to leave this. I thought I'd use this other goldy coloured thread just to weave in between. So this one's more of a bronzy colour. You can't really see in this light. This one's a bit more bronze and this one's a bit more gold. So I'll try that next. I'm going to use this. It's got a nice big large eye. The thread's gone through really super easily. It's got a bit of a curve on the end. It should help me to pick up and move through the different bits over here. Okay, so now I've got my basket, so I can see what that's going to look like, and I'm happy with that. It's going to look nice. But, oops, got it upside down. There we go. And I'm happy with how this is looking. I've got this fabulous glitter cord, which I think I'm going to just couch around the edge of these clouds. But now I'm thinking about the balloon, and I'm thinking, okay, this balloon is going to have loads of glittery pearls all over it. I think I should probably do that on a separate piece of fabric and then mount it. And then as I was thinking about that, then I was thinking about, oh, and I could pad it underneath. If I did increasing size circles and just kind of pad this out, that would look fabulously round. Oh, this is so exciting. Now, how am I going to do this? I think I need to do that on felt, and I need to do it with a bit of felt around the edge so that I can stitch that felt then straight to the backing, and then after that I'll couch and edging round. Felt's going to be the best thing because I don't have to worry about it fraying at the edges then. So maybe some felt on calico, something like that, because I have got a lot of, I'm going to be putting a lot of pearls on that. It's going to be really heavy. But then I think that will go, the calico can be smaller, slightly smaller. I need to think about how I'm doing the edges on that. Maybe I'll do it with my sewing machine, cut round it and just do an edged. I think that's the way to go. Right, that's my next move then, I think, is to get something ready for the, yeah, it's not as easy as it sounds, is it? No, because I need it on a frame, so I don't cut the calico and I don't stitch. Gonna have to think this through more. So now I'm thinking about what colour I actually want my balloon. That was just something that was never really what I was going to do. That was just something for the design. I'm thinking orangey, gold, red, yellow. Just trying to work out how to put them. I tried that and I think that's too static. So I think I want them to go. I think this will give it more of a feeling of movement. So I'm going to cut this out and then put it over on my design and see if I can picture it. Yeah, I think that could work. It's going to be really filled in, and I'm going to have, I've stuck down the little pearls that I'm going to use. I think I've decided I'm going to use pretty much all check. I was thinking about using the cut, and I still could because I've got that in all the colours that I want to use. The cut pearls are a little bit thicker, but I do have them in all of these colours. I've got gold, red and orange and pale gold as well, so I might just cue those up and see, as well as these check pearls. So I've got the same sort of colours, red, marmalade, gold and white gold there, as I've got over here. Maybe I should mix them. Maybe I should. I mean, these are very slightly thicker than the others, so I don't know how well they'll mix. So I think the next thing probably is to do a little sampler of some of these pearls. Obviously not on here. I just need to do a few, maybe some very small squares on a separate piece of fabric with some mounted on some felt, so that I can decide which way to go with these things. Oops, there's my other bit of cut, some nice bronzy colour there. So they do look quite nice. Every cloud needs a silver lining, so I'm going to use my silver sparkle, number 130 around there. And I've also got some green sparkle, so I think I will just put I'll do the rick-rack around the top and around the dark green bit, and then just between that I'm going to use my green sparkle. Light jade sparkle. It's coming together. Yep, perfect basket rope in my opinion. That's what I'm going to use for that. So I've decided I'm going to do a little bit of a sampler, but I'm going to do it on a big enough piece that if it goes really well, I could even use it. So I'm going to, on here, on this calico, I'm going to mount this piece of felt. So I've decided to do white felt. I'm colouring in the background, so if there's any tiny little spaces between the pearls, then there'll be the right colour behind it. So I'm going to do something along this kind of line, and then once that's all coloured in, then I'm going to stitch that onto here and make a start. So I'm thinking I don't want to stitch this too close to the design line, because I might want to fold, yeah, when I cut this I don't want to be cutting the stitches around here, so I'm going to actually stitch bigger around there. I don't see something like this going particularly well in and out of these two fabrics, so I'm going to try just a gold coloured regular thread. I think that's going to be alright. I mean, as long as I could stitch at a slight angle so that it sits into the groove on the twist here, and I think that'll work. That's what I'm going to do. So another thought I've had is I'm just going to loop this. I'm not going to cut the end off because I'll cut them off afterwards. That way this is got less time with an open end that can fray. I don't think that's going to be like a massive loop that's going to get in the way. I'm going to be working across here and then down, so I'll cut them a bit later. So I just need to leave enough. I don't think the ends need to be that long. I think I'll be able to plunge these quite easily through this. So that one's a bit loose at that end because obviously I've got to plunge that one, and this one's a bit loose at this end because I'll be plunging that. So I'll come in with my first stitch around about here. Okay, so I'm reasonably happy with this. I started over here, down that way, left a loop, gone all the way around there, da-di-da-di-da-di-da, and then I've come back up here. And when I got to the top, rather than come around here with a sharp angle, which I thought, because I could have plunged, but I didn't want to, I thought I don't really need to, I've taken the route down here so that I haven't got such a sharp angle, so it won't be so lumpy down here. Then I've come around here, and where I've left another loop, and come back up here. Before coming down again down this side, and then I've just left myself a tail. So I've got two tails to be plunged. I'm going to leave the rest of these uncut because then it's less potential for fraying whilst I complete all this in gold work. And it's amazing, isn't it? Just doing that already, it looks nice, and I haven't even put any gold bits on it yet, well, apart from the edging. So yeah, so we've got red, then we've got gold, we've got marmalade, and then this one's like a white gold. Can't wait. Okay, next. Okay, so I tried the cut purl in similar directions, but it didn't work. I'm just not experienced enough to do that. So in the end, I've gone for Purl Soup, all different sizes and shapes. So I've got my colours, rich red, red blaze and red sparkle in there. Red sparkle's the check, rich red is the cut, and red blaze is the smooth pearl. Now there's an appropriate book to be leaning on. Lovely book, this one. Right. That's my chopped up marmalade, peach and orange fizz. And I think that's a goer for my orange coloured square there. I'm going to give it a go. I think the marmalade's okay. No, oops, sorry. I think that's okay. I'm going to try it. Nearly finished the marmalade orange one. I think this is going to be alright. I think this is going to work. I can still see the outline. Trying to imagine it when these two are filled in. I think they're the next two I need to do. Obviously I don't want to do the whole thing if it's not going to work out, but I do think it just needs to be done. If when I cut it out it's not quite what I want, as you can hear I'm tired now. Well, I've tried, haven't I? You've got to give it a go. So what I find is that if you want to create a nice evenly random soup, Purl soup, start with the big chunky one first. That's the one that's going to show up the most, and put that in randomly. Then I'm going to go the next smallest one, which is the check thread, and I'm going to try and put that in randomly. And then the final one, the pearls, which actually squish nicely into any kind of space that you've got left, then I'm going to put them in at the end. Okay, so now I've added check, so I've filled in a lot of check now. I'm going to go with the smooth pearl to finish with these little edges. It's coming on. It's taken me about half an hour to do each one of these, so you can see how long I've been at it. I've been at it all day. Okay, so here we are. I've stitched all this down. I've left out the frilly bits after some consultation with my husband, who said he thought that was too much. Now, if I'd known it was going to go so well, I would have done this straight onto this. My husband was just telling me he's remembered that he put a cornetto on the radiator to soften it several hours ago. Anyway, so here we go. Yes, if I'd known this was going to work out, I'd have done it straight onto this fabric, but I didn't know it was going to work out, and so now I've had to attach it. And what I've done is, as I mentioned before, I stitched this onto a piece of felt which had calico on the back. Now I put a little bit of PVA around the edge on the inside of that before I then cut out the shape of the calico, cut it and sort of stitch that back. Then I cut the felt close to the edge. Then I cut ever decreasing circles to kind of fill in this gap and kind of bump it up a bit. Now I'm stitching this onto the back of here before I then stitch it onto here and put an edging around it. The gold twist has definitely got lost. I mean, you can see it if you look really closely, but it has got lost on the overall effect. So that's that. But hey ho, it is what it is. This is all a bit of an experiment, so don't really need to show you this too much. All I would say is it works to mix up the different pearls. Attach something like this to your backing and then just stitch straight onto the top. Although, to be fair, I think this was easier because it was on a thinner thing. If I had to do that for all that bump, that would have been quite hard going. So maybe it was okay doing it this way round. I'll put my clouds on after this is all on. This clouds need to go on last. Well, actually no, they don't. The ones that attach here need to go on before I put my edging on. But I've put all this, I've just stitched this down, and then I've put the green sparkle, light green, light jade sparkle, I think that was called, around these hills. But I did keep the rick-rack through there because I quite like that effect, and I am probably going to put some trees on given that I've taken out the other bits and bobs. But this is the next step, is to get this positioned, then I'll know how high my clouds are going, and then I'll know what room I've got for trees, because I've kind of decided to angle this more than I had it in my original picture. So now I've ironed underneath this where I had my design in, and that's now made the ink from the heat pen, the pen that reacts to the heat, that's disappeared. So now now that this is all in place, the clouds can go wherever I want them, the trees can go wherever I want them, but I decided I wanted the balloon at slightly more of an angle than I actually drew it. So I've got my basket here that needs to go on as well, and also my original drawing had the basket kind of over the hills like that, and I don't want that. I want it to definitely be off the ground. So I'm thinking something like that. Yeah, as you can see, I've framed all this up. And it's just as well I put as much fabric around it as I did, because I need every last bit now that I've decided to make this bit higher. So once I've finished attaching this to the back, then I can think about attaching it to the blue fabric. Then I can put my basket on, etc, etc. So that's where I'm up to. Now I've just about finished sewing this down. You can see it is quite raised, which is nice, I like that. And where I've chosen not to stitch the pearls right up to the edge of my original design line, I'm quite glad about that, because what I'm going to do next is to put an edging around here, and then whatever gaps are left I'm going to go in and fill those in right at the end. Now I'm going to sew my clouds on, oops, upside down. I'm going to sew my clouds on next, because that edging is going to go over there. I'm going to have silver edging around these clouds, but I will have a gold edging on this part of the cloud, because it's going to be the gold edging from the balloon. Now, I did think that the original twist was too narrow, so I'm not going to repeat. So you can barely even see it in there. It is just there. You can see it just around the edge of that red, just under here, just there. So I've decided to go with this thicker sparkly thread, glitter thread, this one, antique gold glitter number 131 in my pack, and it's like this green one, but it's an antique gold colour. So I thought about twisting it up and having it too thick, as in TWO, not TOO. But when I did it, can't do it one-handed, when I did it 3 thick, I thought, no, that's the way to go. So I might go 3 thick on that, but the next thing I'm going to do is to attach my clouds where I want them. The 2 clouds that surround the balloon are now attached, just small stitches, out there, back in, out, back in, and just a very light running stitch just around the actual edge of the balloon. So now I'm going to put my silver around here first, actually thinking about it, because I'm going to plunge the ends through there before the gold goes round. So silver around these. Now I've decided not to attach this one yet, because I want to see where my basket sits. My basket, I'm going to attach that next, and I might just move it a millimetre or 2 once I kind of see everything exactly where I want it. But these 2 need to go down in order to edge the balloon. Then I've kind of positioned my basket so I know roughly how long I want the cords to be, and I want that to be just about there. So I think this is right for my other cloud, but I'm just going to wait, because I might even want it a little bit smaller once I've thought about putting some trees back into this design. I think I'm going to go for this one. These look nice, but this is quite rough, so I think catching any of these on there would be a little bit too disastrous. So I'm just going to go with this one to couch down my silver lining for my clouds. I can tell you that this green sparkly, light jade sparkly thread, which, let me tell you what number, that's 129, light jade sparkle thread, that did couch it down nicely and it plunged easily. It didn't shred. It's like a glued kind of, it's like the glitter has been glued onto the thread. My point being, I don't need a massively long end. That will be more than enough to plunge through the back of the fabric. Could I have attached the cloud and the lining at the same time? Yes. Would it have been easy? No, it would have been fiddly. That's why I've decided to put this down first with a white thread, and then I can tuck the attaching thread behind the cloud. That's my plan anyway. I'm coming up and going down in the same place. I'm coming up just to the back, out of the back of the cloud as it were, right on the edge, and then I'm going back down the same place so that you can't see the stitches that are going to hold this. Yes, you will see these little white stitches, but you won't see the couching stitches, apart from if you look closer you're going to see the grey thread over the top of the sparkle, but I don't think it's going to be very obvious. I'm going to need a curved needle to couch this thread down. This is the back side of the balloon. I just can't get the angle back up, so I'm going to have to use one of these. It is a bit thick, but hey ho, that's all I've got. So I'm going to couch down and make sure I couch inside the balloon, where I've got plenty of thickness, and hopefully, not hopefully, it won't come through to the other side. I'll make sure it doesn't come through to the other side. I think this is my best bet for couching down this thread. I've cut double the length and a bit extra. I'm going to twist this as I go. Because of the texture of it, I think it's just going to hold really easily. I'll just twist it, and then as I twist it, I'll couch it down. 2 is, now that I've got this attached, 2 is going to be enough. 2 will be enough, and then all I've got to do is just fill in any little gaps that are left over with the relevant coloured pearl. I've decided the most appropriate place to start couching is at the top of the balloon, because I want it to come around here, and I want it to look very symmetrical. So if there's going to be a little, if it's going to show at all where it's all disappearing under the fabric, I need it to be here. Although, to be fair, these have gone down really, really well. But yeah, these will be covered up anyway. So at the top then, so I'm just twisting this up as I go and then couching it down. So the curved needle just makes it a little bit easier to couch this down. Tie it off, actually, is the correct term. You couch down the other side, you plunge it, and then you tie it off. My balloon is all complete. My basket is now attached. I'm just thinking about my trees now. Do I do them in felt? If so, do I do them in more than one shade of felt? And kind of, if so, I'd probably put the dark green at the back and the light ones at the front. Or do I do tiny little couching circles with this? What's that one? That's 135 lime green metallic. Or do I use something like this silk ribbon? I've got a rough pearl on there. I think probably I want to start with these and then decide, and I'll probably go for the couched metallic, I think, and maybe follow this design. Yeah, I mean, they'll show up nicely against that dark green background, but what I might just do is, now I've sewn this, I might just kind of cut this out and just kind of sit it against there to get an idea. So I've plunged the end to start with. You wouldn't normally do that, but I'm just concerned about getting the ends in afterwards, and that's what I did with my little test run as well. So I've plunged that in and I've actually stitched it back on the other side, and this one's going to sit quite high on the hill because obviously I've got quite a bit of height here, so I think I'm going to have one that's sitting high to start with. So it's going to have to go out as far as these other little small stitches go. Quite fiddly, so what I've decided to do is come up around the needle, use the needle to get the first curve, hold it in place, and then I'll do that for each turn. So I just bring the needle up where I'm going to put my next stitch, which is basically just opposite, and then I'm going to wrap this around the needle, pull up the needle, and then come down the other side of it. This little practice one's proven to be quite useful, even though it hasn't got its stem on it anymore, because I've been able to kind of position, each time I've done one, I've been able to position it to kind of work out where the next one's going to go. And I do feel as though one more would be good. So I think one more round about there. I'm going to do one more. I might even decide another one there, I'm not sure, but I don't want to go too mad. And I'm thinking about maybe some little coloured tiny little seed beads to look like meadow flowers, but we'll see once we've done one more. So it's coming on. This is probably worth video, and I've decided I want these to be 3D after the event. So what I've decided to do is to feed it up into the basket and then just go straight down. I've managed to get this through a big thick needle. I've gone straight down, but I'm struggling at the moment to pull this through on the other side. I've got that much of the needle out, but of course, you know, I'm going through layers and layers of felt here and all sorts, so this is quite tricky. I probably need some pliers, something to really grab hold of the other end of this needle, but I'm just going to keep persevering because I want this 3D. So I've managed it. Just managed to hurt my finger. Never mind. So what I'll do is I'll do the other one first, and then I'll give this little poke around with the malure just to kind of put everything back into place, because obviously I've made quite a big hole there. I've got no way of securing this without messing up the basket, so this is just going to have to be a kind of in place thing, and don't ever let anyone touch these otherwise they'll come out. But yes, if I thought about it in advance, then I could have put that. It would have been easy to do it into the basket before it was stitched on, but it's not. So one more over here, and that's the basket done. Now clearly perspective would have been better if I'd have had the one that's here in the background and that one in the foreground. That would have been better, because it's not quite right, is it? But it's as good as it's going to get. I can't do a better than that, unfortunately. So I just need to tie that off on the other ends. I've drawn this through, so these ends are loose. They're loose behind this basket weave. I just have to rely on that to hold it in. As long as these aren't pulled, it'll be fine. Ooh. And if they are, well, I'll just have to re-thread this end and push it back in if I can. But that's as good as it gets. I don't think I can do much better than that. I could have sewn these into the basket if I hadn't already attached it to the fabric, but I have. So, and this isn't ideal either, going into the balloon there. They should have come up and joined what I had behind there, but you can't see that anyway. That's all been lost because it's actually quite thick now. But there you go, this is how you learn stuff. Do I need some little meadow flowers? I'm not sure. Let's tie off the back of the basket strings and then we'll decide. I tried dotting some little red and orange around there to tie in with the balloon, but the red and orange don't look right, but I think the yellow does. I think this is probably buttercups, isn't it? I think we can have a bit of yellow here, and I might even put a few over there as well. And here it is. We've got some woodland flowers. and a few meadow flowers, some buttercups and daisies, and there it is. Up and away my beautiful balloon, which is 3D. I haven't mounted it yet. I haven't. It's not even sat on anything flat, is it, at the moment? It's sat on my computer, but there we are.